are the sons and daughters of the soul. We are resilient and forever forward-thinking. We ask for nothing else than the opportunity to live and to create the lives that we were meant to live. We want nothing but an equal chance at options and possibilities. The same possibilities and options to live out our potential as our fellow man. We want to be heard, understood, and expressive in our reality. We are the future. We are the creative. We are here.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.
Good afternoon. I'm Tony Rogers, your host for Urbanology, the Art of War. And for those who are new, my birth name is William Anthony Rogers, and I've also been for many years a student of Sun Tzu's classic, The Art of War. So it's kind of like a play on words. So that's how the Urbanology, Art of War theme developed, because the art of war is peace, based on Sun Tzu. I hope all is well with everyone, and we're getting ready to go into the holiday season. Thanksgiving is this week, even though some of my indigenous Indian friends, indigenous Americans, tend not to feel that there's a lot to be thankful for, because they got a lot taken away from them when they were being hospitable to those immigrants who came on their land at that time. Should have probably asked them to register or something. But nevertheless, it's a day off, and from a little child, that was always a time for family together. And now that I'm not eating meat, it's not necessarily a turkey. Actually, there are a number of alternatives for those who might want to know. I have today as a guest a person that I've been able to have the pleasure of knowing for a number of years now. Time flies, but Richard Cox, who is the executive vice president of the Harlem Tourism Board and is the CEO of Unity Tours. Among other things, the Unity brand is in many different places as it relates to sports, entertainment, tourism, production, and the like. But I'm happy to have Richard on to talk about a number of things, including the Harlem Tourism Board's trip to Ghana in April. So I believe Richard is backstage, and if he is, please come on so that we can have this conversation, Mr. Cox. And if he's not on as of yet, because I know he was in Westchester and it's raining kind of hard there, so we might have a signal problem. But I'm sure that I'll get a message in the chat when he's able to come on. A number of things. Besides being the vice president, uh, let me see. I'm trying to. I think I saw that Richard is on. My chat is so small. I have to look at it. And if he's on, whenever he comes on, just uh, uh, have him come on to the. Okay, I see. I see. I see. It's like the Invisible Man. If you ever see the movie The Invisible Man, that's what they were doing. Whatever you're doing, Richard, that's how they used to make the Invisible Man invisible. Oh, and now he's rising. You know, you got a lot of effects going on there, Mr. Cox.
Yeah, it's been a long day, Tony, and the weather has only made it more of a challenge.
I understand that you're getting a lot of rain there, huh?
Yeah, being I'm up in Westchester County at the moment, and I'm near Valhalla.
Yeah.
So not only do you get the rain, but you get the wind that takes it off the top of the Kensico Dam, so that comes down on top of you as well.
And the rain is flying sideways if if the if the wind is heavy enough. So umbrellas don't always help.
Oh no, it doesn't.
Well, I hope it stays up in Valhalla because uh, when it's like that, even if you do have an umbrella, that's you still get wet. But nevertheless, I was just going into some of the things that you do, Richard, and one of the things that I think might be good for the listeners, because many people know you, but then there are a number of people who will be tuning in from all over the place, not only nationally, internationally. So tell the listeners a little bit about Richard Cox. I know that would take a whole 2 or 3 more shows. I mean, give a brief, abridged understanding.
Brief abridged version of Richard Cox. Well, Richard Cox is a Harlem, Sugar Hill native, and I'm very proud to say that. And I've been a strong supporter of the Harlem community since, I would say, my inception. I'm currently the executive director of Team Unity, which is a small non-for-profit that advocates for the social determinants of health. And of course, that's a huge discussion when we start talking about, other things that impact health besides, going to the doctors and so forth, but also talking about, economic stability, social context, health access and quality, food insecurity, and so forth. But of course, Tony, I'm always most proud to be the vice president of the Harlem Tourism Board, which has been an exciting adventure over almost a decade now, working alongside you guys. And of course, I also have affiliations with the National Association of Each One Teach One, which is the program directors of Rucker Park.
And again, Rucker Park is legendary based on New York City basketball. If you are familiar at any rate of New York City basketball, you would know about Rucker Park and my good friend Bob McCullough. Matter of fact, Bob McCullough sent me a text. He went to the same college as my cousin and my mom, Benedict, and he sent me a text. Benedict was undefeated in this year. They're the only HBCU college that became undefeated in basketball.
Oh, so you got that text too? Yeah, it's in football. They won 11-0.
Football, well, yeah, football.
And Bob was very proud of that, so he made sure that everyone, and I did say everyone, on his listing did receive that email. So if you didn't receive it by email, you received it by text.
Well, since he knows that my mom and my cousin was at Benedict, so because I sent that out to who they probably know in the South, some of my mom's people. But yeah, Benedict is close to home, so to speak. That I was raised in the South, actually, up until I was about 5 years old. I was born in the Bronx. Parents, first generation to come up here. Once I was born, they shipped me down to grandma. So I didn't know who my mom was. My mom was Mama Lizzie. So my mother came down, and I was running around 4.5 years old with a bottle and took it away. I said, Mama Lizzie, who's this woman? Taking away my bottle. And when she said those days are over, those was over on Convent Avenue. And I bring that up because her favorite church is Convent Avenue Baptist Church. And one of the other things that Richard, is people who know you sometimes are surprised that you are.
Yeah, I'm a card-carrying member of the Convent Avenue Baptist Church. My family was part of the Kingdom Builders. The folks that actually walked alongside the first pastor and helped build alongside Dr. Saunders back in the 1940s. And,
Wow.
they helped establish several ministries that are still in effect as of today. And not only were they along with Dr. Saunders, but along with Pastor Manny Wilson, who also was a great notary in the Harlem community. And
well, that was my time. Wilson was, the time when my mother used to take me to church.
Yeah. And the great thing I remember about Pastor Manny Wilson, because he was a very short guy. He wasn't a tall guy. He was a short guy.
Yeah.
And we used to joke when we were kids that, although he may be short, he still can see everything.
Yeah, Manny Wilson, he, was an interesting guy. But you might have probably ran into my mother, Anna Rogers, and probably didn't even know it,
And who
she
knew?
was there every Sunday, so.
And who knew years later, here I am talking to her son.
Yeah, she was there every Sunday. But, one of the things that, as it relates to, and plus one of the things, Unity Tours, you also are a licensed tour guide. And you have been going backwards and forwards, and we'll go in and out with that because there's some other things I want to talk to you about. But we do have a trip for Ghana, which will be after the 16th of April. We probably need to lock in the dates pretty soon.
Yeah.
But as long as it's after the 16th, because a number of people, including Yana Woodhouse, said it's going to be after tax. I'm sure that's going to be the case.
Yeah. Right now, I believe the dates are April 23rd through May 1st, 2024.
What is that, 10 days?
Yeah, roughly 10 days. So it roughly starts around April 23rd, 2024. It may go to like May 1st or May 2nd. So you're looking at about roughly about a 10-day experience within Ghana. It will actually take you through the cities of Accra, all the way through up to Tamale in the northern region.
Northern region, which is where a number of people have not gone. And it's, as they say, a little less traveled, which is probably a good experience.
Route. I had a great experience of traveling to Tamale this past April. It was my first time traveling to the north of Ghana. And, it was a different environment because on my previous trips to Ghana, I only stayed within the greater Accra area.
Hmm.
And for some people who have seen pictures of
Like New York.
yeah, right. There are some places in Accra where you really just feel that you're in New York, and that includes the traffic. Yeah. So here you are. You have the great experience of traffic. You have the great experience of restaurants. One of the other funny things about Accra is the airport is really about a block or two away from some of the major hotels. You can literally walk out the airport. You can, if you want to dodge the traffic going across some of the highways, make it over to like some of the major hotel brands, including the Marriott. So, with that in mind, you feel that you have not left home. Even some of the restaurants that are within the area are serving Americanized food or Western food. It wasn't only until I had a chance to experience a quote unquote Sunday brunch in one of the hotels in the Marriott that I got a chance to experience some traditional food outside of going to places like Tamale and other parts of Accra.
Well, again, as you know, we've started our travel program going to Senegal. And for 2 years, I know we had a couple of trips. We had a fan trip and the like. One of the interesting things about Ghana is that in Senegal, the colonizers were French. So obviously, the French and Walla is the language. In Ghana, the colonizers were British. So there was a English language availability, which I would imagine, and you probably know, is a lot easier, even though you speak about 5 different languages. So it doesn't really matter with you, but for people like myself that, struggle with the King's English, going into another type of a country sometimes. But you learn, one of the interesting things that I've learned in travel is that when you're in a place long enough, you're surprised how you pick up certain types of things that like where's the bathroom, where's the bank, and there are other questions, that you don't say on, TV, but where are the places to go to have a party and all of those things. But being in a country is a lot easier to learn a language than trying to, study it in the classroom or.
Exactly. And the technique about language is what we call ingratiation. And what I always tell folks when they travel, if you learn the basics of some of these languages, you would just really see how they identify one another. So, for example, when you go to a French-speaking country, the 2 words I always tell people to remember is "ce" and "ça," which basically means this and that. So if you start out with that, and if you have it to point, you got the problem solved.
"Ce" and "ça."
That's it. This and that. That's the first thing you learn.
Okay.
So when you go back to Senegal, when we go back to Senegal, if you just practice those 2 words, you'll be able to be on your way.
So how does that work? I say "ce."
It means this.
Uh-huh.
And "ça" means that.
Okay. So
when they offer you food, you can tell them no, this or that.
Okay. All right.
If you want something in the store, this or that.
Oh, "ce." Okay.
There you go. Very simple.
Speaking about Senegal, I had a very interesting Robin Bell, who's the executive director of Jazzmobile, is now a member of the Harlem Tourism Board. So we've been talking about how we might be able to collaborate. And one of the things that we're going to start working on is the 2025 Senegalese Jazz Festival, to collaborate with the Tourism Board and Jazzmobile too, because there are a lot of anniversaries floating around that time, including Halloween. that will be over by that time, but the promotional opportunities will Halloween Week's anniversary is the 2024. But that is an interesting concept of working with Jazzmobile to create something out there. Because Randy Weston was trying to do that, and did before he died. And Ron Scott, who actually went to Senegal, I should have had him on the show because he was raving about Senegal. He says, "Man, the people are so nice. They take me every place, and the food and he hasn't even seen the northern region. He's just been, but he was so happy getting connected because I connected him with a couple of people, as you know, and he had some. He was staying in a bed and breakfast, but he says I didn't want to come back.
Yeah, it's really that experience that makes you take a look at yourself, not only in your way of humanity, but in your way of being Black or just being of African American. One of the things I said earlier in Ghana this past April, when I was presenting at the Cultural Oneness Festival, I told folks that currently 44% of the Harlem population consider themselves Black. 44% of the Harlem population consider themselves Black, or what we may say African American. Of that 44%, 15% consider themselves Africans living in America.
Which is a lot different.
And I told everybody to pause and hear what I just said. 15% consider themselves Africans living in America. So as you can see, our community here in Harlem may have some identity problems we might need to resolve, before, we take that trip, because when you go to Africa, whether it's Ghana, whether you're going to Senegal, whether you go to South Africa, where you go to Mali, where you want to go to even parts of Egypt or even Ethiopia, they consider everyone of the blood to be African.
Well, technically speaking, from a scientific perspective, everyone is African, but based on the discoveries of the bones of Lucy and some of her counterparts. But you're right. I was writing a piece, and one of the things that I mentioned is exactly what you said as it relates to understanding who we are. It's one thing to say that you're African American but your heritage goes back for maybe 450 years. But if you say that you're African born in America, then your heritage goes back to the beginning of time. That's a big difference as it relates to who you are and what you are. And it's kind of like hard to really put that into perspective until you go to one of those countries. Well, Senegal, I've had the chance to get to Senegal and the Ivory Coast. And it's also vice versa, because the Africans have been colonized also, so they automatically think that if you are walking in, I've had that the first time I went to Senegal many years ago, they wanted to know, are you a rock star? Are you a movie star? Are you an athlete? Because those are the only people that they really saw. They didn't really see, the common African who was born in America there as often. The people that they would see are diplomats, celebrities, or people on that, which gave them a different understanding of what Africans who live or born in America than they do, as we get the same with them, because a lot of people we see are people who have the funds and who've been colonized coming to the U.S. They're not necessarily, the brothers that are on the block, the tangos and the people that we know. So it's important to travel to get that connection. And Soul City has been very helpful in that. And that's one of the whole ideas of developing that connection to see the people who are like you.
Well, it's very interesting you said that, because in all of my trips to Africa, and I can tell you the experience I had on my first trip several years ago. My I wouldn't say my convoy, but folks I was traveling with, we were pulled over by the military police. And when the military police came over, took a look inside the vehicles, I was told, just look straight ahead. Don't look, just look straight ahead. So this is when I was trying to learn. I was trying to learn Twi from the dialects in Ghana. Basically, the military police said to the driver, "Who was that light-skinned man in the back seat?" And once they explained that I'm just here, I'm a person visiting, looking for some investment opportunities. I came as a guest as one of the local kings. Basically, he was saying, well, since you're driving that North African around, they basically told the driver that they had to pay a fine, a fee, in order to pass through. So I wasn't really, looked upon as someone being from the western part of the continent. But because of my skin complexion, they automatically made the assumption that I was North African.
Interesting.
But I'm used to it, which is fine. Traveling through,
even though they have some pretty dark North Africans too. I mean,
right.
In general, yeah.
Right. But on first appearance, looking at me, they said, North African.
Yeah.
And then it didn't help. It didn't hurt it didn't help my situation that, we passed some other folks. They were speaking French and I understood, what they were saying.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was told not to speak. Do not even give the appearance that you understand what's going on, because automatically they would know that you're not from here, and they would try to use ways to influence and get some money from you, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I had a similar experience in Ivory Coast. It was late at night, and we were driving back to the hotel, guy, and it was a bunch of us, and they pulled us over, and for some reason they could tell that I wasn't, whether it was how I dressed or whatever, because we were all, I mean, I wasn't, I'm not that much, darker than you, but they would say, well, who's this guy? They explained that I was here on, a trip or what have you. And the driver just gave this guy something, he just said, we are okay. And the guy said, okay, go ahead. But that is something that you see sometimes. However, when you go with organized tour groups and all of that, that's a whole nother story, because that's the economy and they don't really mess with that. It's just when you're, like a loner,
right?
When you're you're on your own, that's when you run into that. Trips, which is why in Senegal, Ravina tours, they know everybody, and they know, they being the law enforcement, they know that that's money, so they don't want to mess with that. They don't want to mess with the tourism economy. Plus, the head of Ravina Tours used to be in the Secret Service for Senegal, so he
it's always good to have those type of folks with you, and traveling around throughout Africa, whatever country that you're in. But one of the things that I wanted to also emphasize on these trips going to Ghana or to Senegal or Mali or some of the other locations we'll be looking at, is really the opportunity for those who are looking for the experience of investment. Some folks, like myself, are getting close to that retirement age, and although we say we may never slow down, and we may not take a look at other opportunities, taking a look at the African continent as a way of diversification, especially for retirement, might be an option for some folks. This may be a way for you to extend your, primary objectives during retirement. Some folks may think that, Central America might be a way to extend these opportunities. But definitely for folks who are looking to retire, check out some of the opportunities that are available to you on the African continent as a way of diversifying yourself in retirement.
Yeah, which is a good idea. And even investments, period, especially in places like the northern region, there are a lot of opportunities to look at business. I mean, they have a lot of products that are used regularly, shea butter and all those types of things that are, and plus they have a lot of gold. I mean, gold and a lot of rare metals, depending upon where you are as far as your investment IQ. There's a lot of interesting opportunities there.
Yeah, there's several interesting opportunity, and I always go back to the the partnership of the what we call like the treaty. They call it the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which is something your listeners may want to get a chance to research. It's called the African Growth and Opportunity Act.
Mm-hmm.
And it talks about all the investment opportunities, between the United States and the continent, and how it's divided up amongst the several regions and, of course, several countries throughout Africa, just in case some people are looking for investment opportunity. But, just like the conference that we had, I believe it was earlier this year or late last year, Tony, it was the one that was at the Marriott Hotel down in New York City. One of the things we have to be aware of is that the Chinese, are already a couple of steps ahead of us. In terms of
a couple of steps.
And I'll just say that conservatively. One of the things that I saw at the airport, and I think I probably shared this with either you or a couple other folks. It basically had a sign in the airport that allowed you to transform. Transform your currencies into Chinese yuan in order to get better deals on materials and other things that you might need. So what are we saying here? Well, it basically takes you to take your American dollars, your euros, your pounds, you trade them into Chinese yuan, and by them being in Chinese yuan, you'll be able to pretty much buy goods and services at a reduced rate. Now, it can go even further. Where you have situations where, gold could be sold on a world market at a lower rate if it was traded in Chinese yuan. Because the Chinese are there taking the gold, extracting the gold, put it as part of their portfolio. But in order for you to get it, you got to get it in their currency. So that's starting to elevate, the trading capacity, of the Chinese yuan.
Now, this was in Ghana. I'm sure that it is in all
of Africa, but I saw it in Ghana. I saw the poster in Ghana. I took pictures of it. I posted it on social media, and I said to everyone I knew, I said, "Look at this. Look at this." And when we went to the several parts of the northern region, we were told that motorbikes, scooters, and so forth that were given to the people, to the town, were provided by Chinese investors. Yeah. And also, before the Chinese arrived, certain parts of the northern region was actually constructed with Russian investment. So, when you take a look at, the Americans coming in now, we're several steps behind. But as we know, although we may be several steps behind, there's still chance for us to have fun at the party. There's a lot of untapped resources within the northern region of Ghana and throughout Africa that still is in line for investment. We just have to really play our part and be very serious about what we're trying to do.
Well, the Chinese are all over in America. A lot of the stuff that we take advantage of, like the movies, the AMC, and all of those things, are Chinese. Matter of fact, there may be a need soon to use understand certain types of Chinese, dialogues in order to better improve your ability to get around certain places. But question, with the Chinese yuan, do they actually say like in Ghana, in some of the smaller locations, do they take the yuan?
That was one of the things that I was investigating, was how deeply traded was that currency.
Right.
So when you go to some of the local vendors, were they able to take it, or was it just done on an investor level through the larger banks, whether they start doing the trading through there? Because sometimes, the larger banks will take the money, the currency, as an investment, but the average vendor is still, on the, I'm trying to use the word, like when you balance it between the beam, will they actually take the currency? I did not get a chance to interact that deep to see exactly what vendors would take the currency or not.
Because I know when the last time I was in Senegal, the euro was worth a lot more than the American dollar. So, if you had the euros, they would like to have that. However, if you don't understand the exchange rates, whether you have American dollars or the euro, if you don't understand the exchange rates, you still get ripped off. So you really have to have someone with you that's familiar with that, or make sure that you have exchanged your money so that you can give them what it is actually costs.
Yeah. I really don't want to give bad advice to anyone, but I've always had great success with monetary exchanges on the street, working with street vendors. I know that might be bad advice to some, but when you working through banks, you're looking at not only the exchange rate but also the fee for the transaction.
Right.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Matter of fact,
a little dangerous, but at least you'll get a lot more with your.
But you have to always be, careful. For me, developing a relationship with Avita Tours, they'll take you to the place that you need to go. They'll take you to the place and make sure that you're getting what you need to get. That's what I would advise. I don't know whether or not, if you're traveling by yourself, you want to, do that, because
like I said, bad advice. But
that's and again, you have a command of the language, but make sure that you know someone that you trust. It's best to know someone that you trust to trade with the guys on the street than not. But if you don't know anyone, then you might lose more going on the street than you would going into a bank, because at least there's some restraints.
Well, that's one of the issues here, because if you were to travel from the United States to Ghana, it is extremely difficult to get Ghana cedis before you get on that plane. There's a very limited amount. So if you go to a major bank here in the U.S., and ask for currency exchange and you want Ghana cedis, chances are you will not be able to get it. And that's a high probability. And the same could be for all the other major currencies, throughout the African continent, with the exception of the South African rand, which you can almost get almost anywhere. But, those other dominant currencies, whether it could be Nigerian nairas or Ghana cedis, it's very, very difficult to get. So when you get there,
if you're in Harlem, if you go to 116th Street, Little Senegal, you can you can be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, you're probably right. But that's a street transaction. You're probably right that you can actually get it, and get those. But I suggest getting as much as you can in the United States, prior to getting to, where your final destination is in Africa.
Mm-hmm. Unless you're with the Harlem Tourism Board, who has some connections and relationships, especially if you're going to Senegal, to be able to give you the opportunity to get what you might need at the best possible price. And
well, that's a new business for the tourism board, Tony. We can open up a currency exchange with the African currency.
Well, I don't. That may be interesting to some, but I'm not sure whether I'm ready to do that. You're going to. I saw a flyer with you speaking in Ghana in December. What's that about?
Yeah, once again, I have the pleasure of returning, to Ghana, to Tamale, to be part of the Cultural Oneness Festival. And, once again, I will be speaking about the relationships between, major cities in the U.S., most notably the village of Harlem and other major cities in the U.S., and actually try to orchestrate, major tours coming from parts of the U.S. into Ghana. Ghana has an initiative that they started several years ago. It's more, we call it the Coming Home Initiative.
In 2019, they had a major rollout.
Like several other African nations, encourage folks of African descent to come back home in order to establish some sort of residency, which could actually turn around and could be anything from passports to multi-year visas, just so you could be part of the experience. So not only would I be going back to Ghana to talk about that, I'll also be talking about economic development, investment opportunities, and also talk about some of the social determinants of health that some folks only believe that only exists here in the United States. But no, social determinants of health, is really a worldwide issue. So I'll be going there speaking on several different topics, meeting with several leaders throughout the northern region and some of the other surrounding countries. It's going to be another great experience, and I really can't wait to get back there.
And by the time, we have to really have the April trip pretty much in place, Richard, before you leave. As strange as that might seem, because it's only a couple of weeks before you go down there, but people need to have some idea of what's going to go on so that they can begin to prepare themselves for that. And in the best of all worlds, when you go there in December, it's just confirming all of the stuff that we have already put into place as it relates to an all-exclusive round-trip ticket, 2 round-trip tickets, because it's 2 planes, one to get from JFK to Accra.
Yeah, to Accra, you go from Accra to Tamale.
And to Tamale, right?
Yeah, on African World Airlines.
And then, the hotels, the tours, and all of that stuff. The meals be in one place. So that's something that is going to be important. And we will make sure that once we get all of that information, either on the site, the goharlem.org site, or through Soul City, once we start to finalize all of that stuff, we will make sure that you have information well in advance. One of the things that also, Richard, you're always doing so many things. I'm amazed, brother. Um, Many years ago, I had the pleasure of working with a brother who was a police officer. His name was David Walker, and he was community affairs. And David Walker was around when we did the first Harlem Day, uh, and uh, and of course, uh, young people closing off streets like 125th Street and 135th Street and 155th Street all in one day. Some eyebrows were raised as to whether or not we were going to be able to do that. And a lot of pressure was placed on a lot of the community affairs officers because, in a sense, it was their responsibility. If they mess up, it's on you. So, David was really on making sure that everything that was happening right, But that created an interesting relationship. And as the day was so successful, that's when David started talking about, well, there's some other things that I do that I think we should talk about because, you guys did this Halloween Week thing, but I do a Father's Day bicycle race around and then it was Morris Park.
Morris Park, yeah.
And also I do I'm promoting Double Dutch, and that was around 1974, 75 that we were talking about this. Fast forward, the International Double Dutch competition at the Apollo Theater has become truly an international Double Dutch competition, which people come from Japan. Matter of fact, Japan has won, at least when I was there, 2 or 3, and they lost one, which is, we won't talk about. Brooklyn took it, but everybody, my daughter, everybody walked out and said, well, there was some controversy about that, but it's a marvelous activity. It's not like the Double Dutch that your sisters or you used to do, and you have to see it to believe it, because some of the things that they do jumping, I couldn't do walking. But anyway, that's going to be the first Sunday, as always, in
Yeah, it's going to be on Sunday, December 3rd. And, getting back to what you're saying about, David Walker Sr., it's thinking about his legacy, thinking about his contribution, thinking about his dedication to the community. And from his dedication, from his outgrowth of being a community affairs detective, he created 2 outstanding events that we still consider part of the indigenous sporting events of Harlem.
Yeah.
And the one that we were talking about earlier about the Harlem Skyscraper Cycling Classic, yes, it started out in 1973, in June of 1973, just when Mayor John Lindsay had passed an ordinance to rename Mount Morris Park to Marcus Garvey Park. And so that took place in 1973. And so the Harlem Skyscraper next year will be in its 52nd year. And we're very happy for the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cyclists that still come to the Father's Day event every year to celebrate and maintain his legacy. And of course, out of that, the second event was, of course, we now know as the National Double Dutch League Holiday Classic. And that's the one that's going to take place at the Apollo Theater on Sunday, December 3rd at 1 p.m. at the Apollo Theater. I'm sorry, the world famous Apollo Theater, because like you said, Tony, people from all over the world come to this event just to see the experience. And you're right. They can do everything that we can't even do walking.
And actually, at one point, I know that there has been talk, and I'm pretty sure it still is going on, to have Double Dutch introduced to the Summer Olympics. And there's been, I know Japan had been pushing that because Japan looks at it as a professional sport, just like certain other professional sports that represent the country. Japan, which is why they are how they are, they can, get funding from the country to train, and it's obvious because they tend to do things that, as I said, that are incredible.
Yeah,
Are there still tickets available? Because I know that.
yeah, there's still tickets available, but they are going fast. And and
How
someone asked
would
about that.
someone be able to? How would what would be the way? Would they contact the Apollo directly?
The Apollo box office will have the most up to date stats and seating arrangements for the tickets that are still remaining. The Apollo Theater box office. I suggest they go that route first
Hmm.
to obtain some tickets.
Which is always great, and I know that for those who um, have not experienced that, it's watching these young people, and that actually, I think not last year, but year before last, there was a group from Africa, from Kenya, I believe, that took part. But Japan, France, uh, North Carolina, boy, North Carolina, what they have about 5 buses, 7 buses.
Yeah, we're I'm always very happy to see our folks from Chapel Hill, come up to the Apollo Theater every year, because for them, that's true dedication. To travel from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, to Harlem, USA, on an annual basis, with those multiple bus loads of folks just to get that experience at the Apollo Theater. So, big shout out to Ray Frederick. Of course, big shout out to Lauren Walker, who, diligently puts on this event every year. And, we're looking forward for another great celebration. And modestly enough, I really hope that I will serve everyone well as the master of ceremony.
As always, the
I try
hostess
my
with the
best.
mostest.
Yeah, I try my best. I try to, make it relevant, but also at the same time, I really tried to take a look at the historical aspect of the event, because a lot of people who come to the show, they do not understand, the history of Double Dutch and its impact on the Harlem community, and of course how that grew to other urban communities throughout the United States, where you really can't even say urban anymore. It really comes down to suburban. There are a lot of suburban locations throughout the United States that do have active Double Dutch programs. And with that type of universal appeal, yes, you would think that the Olympic Committee would have made up their minds already to putting this in, even if it's just not a medal event, but an exhibition event.
Hmm.
And I'm going to go on a limb and say this, was that I believe recently I heard that breakdancing is being considered as an Olympic event. Being from Harlem, I had some time being raised in the Bronx. There's nothing wrong with breakdancing. I even tried breakdancing several times when I was when I was in my teens and early 20s. But we also have to take a look at the breakdancing in its artistic form, and Double Dutch in its artistic form. You take a look at the gymnastics that are involved in breakdancing, as well as the gymnastics that's involved, in Double Dutch. Time, learning, training, history, dedication. If you can do one, you can definitely do the other.
Well, one of the things, and I'm going to, I love being on Soul City because you record history. One challenge that I'm going to take up, a personal challenge that I'm going to pick up, starting in 2024, is to begin to promote um, swing dancing, the Lindy. The Lindy Hop started in the Savoy Manor, and it's a dance that is universal. Everybody around the world, if you know the basic steps, the one step, two to the three to one side, three to the other. If you know that basic step, you can go anywhere in the world and find somebody that you can dance with, except for Harlem, where it started. So I interviewed the swing dance uh, group.
Was it Barbara Jones?
Yeah, Barbara. Yeah, and she became a member. She came to the Harlem Tourism Board meeting, and she became a member. And so she gave me a challenge. She said, "Why don't you come by? You know, they have every Thursday, no, every Tuesday, they have a class." And I went, and it was funny. There were about 20 people there, and it was the only brothers was myself and another brother. You know, there were Chinese, there were Europeans, and French, but I guess what I'm saying is that if you go to any location, they always have a dance that originated there. Even if you go to El Barrio, there's a dance that originated in El Barrio. Um, uh, Harlem has a dance that everybody does. That's universal. It became, they were talking about the stories in the interview of how during World War II, that was a sign in Europe of resistance because, if you did swing dancing, that was against the law. So people would do the swing dance, it became a cult, and there's so much history that has been hidden from this dance that started at the Savoy Manor. And I want to take it upon myself to at least allow for people like I'm doing now to be aware of it. And it's not a difficult dance. I mean, there's a lot of pieces to it, but the steps are not that difficult. Matter of fact, the steps are, you can actually do the steps in current music, which is what is being used to help young people. It's almost like, how we do the step and all of those other things. You can make it, you can do the Lindy and use current music to do that. So that's one of the things, Richard, that I want to try to get as many, yourself and some others, to at least look at a class. But I want to get good enough to teach. I love, I would love to be able to, tack that on to my Harlem resume, to help promote the Harlem Swing Dance Group, making the Lindy something that becomes our dance, which is our dance. Something that.
Well, Tony, I mean, you can definitely take pride, because I remember seeing pictures of you back in the day in your roller skating days.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. Which that was even when I was training in the martial arts, I would train by roller skating. I could roller skate for 5-6 hours, and that was skate around Central Park about 4 or 5 times, dancing, and what have you. That for me, that was better than running. So I think that the Lindy may be a good way to really start to keep myself. But they had a guy there who was, I think he was like 80 something. He was well into his 80s. I knew he was older than I was, and I was trying to keep up with some of these things. But then I saw him, and I said to myself, if he can do this, I'm not going to stop. I wanted to sit down a couple of times because it's an exercise. But again, Richard, we're starting to wind down. Obviously, there's so many things that we haven't touched, that like the work that you're doing as relates to bringing the farmers market to Harlem at City College, and the Adam Creighton Powell State Office building. That is over now, I would imagine.
Yeah, the CSA at City College, another spectacular year. Big shout out to our partners at City College. The Gonzalez Farm, 607 CSA, the Star Farm Alliance, Catskill Farm Alliance, and Star Route Farms, who was very dedicated in helping us, be a successful second season. And we look forward for season 3, serving the folks at City College in that community in the Hamilton Heights, Sugar Hill area, with a community supported agriculture program, as well as, year two for the successful farmers market we had at the Harlem State Office building. We're looking to go weekly, Tony, in 2024.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. And I think we talked about it briefly. Since there's a new dispensary right across the street, a little further down, and since the governor passed the regulation that you can use these types of state property events like the farmers market to also sell cannabis. Have you talked with the Gotham Bud dispensary to see can there be some collaboration?
The question is, have they talked to me?
Which is true.
Let's take it one step at a time. The state has endorsed us selling New York State wine, New York State craft beer. So from what I understand, there's only 11 authorized dispensaries so far out there. So that means that 99% of the dispensaries out there are really illegal, but according to New York State law, that is. So has any of the 11 approached us? The answer is no. Have we had any conversations with anyone? The answer is no. Yes, we are New York State farmers market. We are on New York State property. So yes, we can sell New York State, authorize everything.
Well, we should talk about that offline. I know that we're getting, that's another conversation we need.
Yeah, definitely talk about it offline because we want to make sure we follow everything within state laws.
If people are willing to get to you for many of the things that we talked about, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, what they can actually do is go to Team Unity Inc. TEAMUNITYINC.org at gmail.com. That's TEAMUNITYINC.org at gmail.com. That's a great way to reach not only myself, but anyone within the organization. And of course, they can also use all the social medias. That's either Facebook, Instagram, or X, formerly known as Twitter. And of course, the handle is Team Unity Incorporated.
Well, Richard Cox, I know that you got a million things going on. I hope the weather has toned down a little bit there. But have a happy holiday. We have to get together. I think we have a HTB meeting. It's in December, right?
It's in December, right.
Coming up. And there's a lot of stuff that's going on. So I'm sure that we'll be talking with each other very soon. But until that time, you and your family have a happy holiday.
Same to you, Tony. Like I said, don't hurt yourself. And, thanks to you once again for a great show. And also thank you, Soul City Television.
Yeah, I'm going to teach the Africans the Lindy when I go there in April. That's one of my goals.
And don't learn this that they show you something else.
Right. I'm sure that they will. Well, thanks again, Richard. I appreciate, as always, talking with you. And thank you, Matt McCoy and the Soul City Group for giving the platform for Urbanology to once again bring interesting guests like Richard Cox to our listeners. And of course, if you missed this, you can go on Facebook for the Harlem Tourism, Harlem Tourism Board, HTB Harlem Facebook page, as well as Soul City Facebook page to see this again if you want to share it with some of your friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Have a good evening, Richard, for the rest of your evening. And that brings us to the end of this particular broadcast. We, God willing, will be back again next week. Looking forward to seeing you again. And again, my thanks to the Soul City team for making this happen. And please enjoy yourself over the holiday weekend and watch your diet. Don't overdo it. This is Tony Rogers, your host for Urbanology Systems, signing off. Take care.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.